Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Today's video features true scary stories from viewers sent in like yourself. Sit back, relax, and stay sinful. Story number 1. Today marks 1 year since it happened. My friends and I had been on a full week-long camping trip, and for the first 5 nights everything went according to plan. We partied hard and spent time hiking and fishing some of our favorite childhood spots. My boys and I grew up in these woods and spent more time outdoors than in. On the 6th night of our trip, one of my friends noticed a strange sound late into the night. The time was 2:15 a.m., and other than this strange low guttural sound, the forest was absolutely silent. It was almost eerie in a way. All fell silent. Then the sound came again, and then again. It sounded like a man trying to make a howling sound about 20 yards into the deeper brush, just before the forest becomes truly dense. I always carry a firearm with me, and one of my other 3 friends with us does the exact same thing. At this point, I have my pistol drawn with my tactical flashlight in tow. I scan the perimeter, and about 5 seconds after I do, I notice something that is very out of place. There appears to be a hooded man trying to hide behind an old oak tree. I call out, "Hey, you, what is your business here?" He does not speak a word in response to my call, slowly raises his right arm and makes a pointing motion towards us. We all look around our camp and behind where we are standing. Within 10 seconds, we are surrounded by 15 large figures in dark black hoods. These people seem to be members of a satanic cult of some sort. My friend and I have both of our guns pointed at the figures, and we warn them to stay back and leave our campsite at once. The men slowly begin to chuckle and laugh in these deep, demonic-sounding growls. One man closest to me spoke up and said, "Do you have enough bullets for all of us?" While laughing, they all pull out baseball bats with nails hammered into the thick ends of the bats, while a couple of other men pull out sledgehammers. I look at my friends and we are all back to back preparing for the fight of our lives. Back to the bullet situation. I told the leader of this group, "Let's play and find out." I cocked my pistol and shot the leader once in each of his kneecaps, and he screamed in pain and dropped to the ground in an instant. The other men grew silent. This was the last thing I thought would ever happen. We expected them to rush us full force, weapons drawn. They picked up their friend and slowly and silently walked into the forest and out of sight. We packed our things and left within minutes. We never saw those men again and made it home without incident. I know how lucky we got that night, and I guess it just wasn't our time to die. Story number 2. I worked night audit at this semi-swanky hotel next to the airport. One night I get a call from a lady in 204. She says there was arguing, loud banging and crying coming out of room 206. Check the computer. No one has checked into that room due to maintenance issues. What the hell? I called my supervisor to see what to do. She tells me to call on-site security and follow them up with a key. No thanks, but I was the bigger man and go up anyways. As we get off the elevator, we can hear the crying. It's so loud. My heart starts racing as we near the door, so I hand the key to the security guard. The next 5 minutes seem to happen in slow motion. He opens the door and immediately flicks on the light. Keep in mind, 206, we're on the 2nd floor. Only door in was by me, and this is at like 3 a.m. No one else is around. As we enter the room, the shower is on. Steam is coming from under the door. There is only one lamp on in the room. It's so cold. And there's a lady in a red lacy bra and black panties, with super red hair curled up crying on the bed. She was facing away from us. As Frank approached her, he asked if everything was okay. She sort of stopped crying and rolled over. When she did, a wave of horror came over me. She was super pale, covered in blood, and was just staring behind us. That's when we realized the shower had stopped and the door was open. There was a man about 6'5" standing in the doorway. As we turned around, cops tased him and arrested him. Turns out he was a rapist who hides in hotel rooms, kidnaps women who stay there, and cuts them open. To this day, I will never go to a hotel again. Story number 3. This story takes place in August of 2013 in the mountains of southern Oregon. I'm a USAF Security Forces airman, which is a military policeman. My girlfriend was at work, and as a swelteringly hot day began to turn into thunderstorms, my buddy Nick, another military cop, and I decided to go explore some back roads and get out of the heat in town. Southern Oregon is crisscrossed with logging roads, some actively used and many totally forgotten and grown over. Nick and I spent many of our days off starting on roads that we knew, finding roads we didn't know, driving for hours into the mountains, eventually navigating back to paved roads. On this particular day, with storm clouds building over the mountains, we set off on a road we had never been on and began the drive into the mountains. After driving for around an hour, we hadn't seen nor heard any signs of other people in the woods. We rounded a bend in the thick fir woods and emerged in a meadow that was totally surrounded by thick aspen groves. The meadow was perfectly flat and eerily still. We both noticed a strange stillness almost immediately. No birds, hardly any insect sounds, no squirrels, and certainly no other people. On the far side of the meadow, right at the edge of the tree line, there was a picnic table. The table was very odd, however. It was painted a bright orange and was much larger than a typical picnic table in a park. Remarking on this, Nick drove through the meadow to get a closer look. I remember being apprehensive as we approached. The whole scenario was exceptionally strange. The overall stillness of the aspen grove was unsettling. Also, it was nearly impossible to see far into the trees, as aspens grow extremely close together. When we parked by the table, I hopped out of the passenger seat of the truck to check it out. I'm not very tall, only 5'5". Regardless, the table was ridiculously oversized and practically unusable. The seats were nearly at chest level, meaning I would have to climb up to even sit on them. As I was looking at the table, Nick called me over to the truck, and I noticed he was looking back into the aspens. At first, I couldn't see what he was looking at, but then I noticed a splash of color that was completely out of place in the thick trees. A small one-man tent was set back in the trees, about 50 feet from the strange table. I had an initial feeling of dread and felt certain there was someone in the tent, and if we could see the tent, they could see us. There were no campgrounds in the area, no people, no main roads for miles. Surely someone camping so remotely would be, at the very least, a strange person. However, as we observed the tent, we didn't see any movement or hear any sounds coming from it. Nick suggested I call out. I didn't want to, but I did. "Hey, anyone in there?" I yelled. No reply. Feeling completely on edge, Nick and I thought about driving away and leaving this strange area, but we began to fear the worst. What if there was a body in the tent? What if somebody had gotten kidnapped? Foolish, I know, but we thought it all the same. After some debate, we decided to have Nick turn the truck around to drive away from the camp. Should we need to leave in a hurry, we would be waiting behind the wheel. With my heart pounding, I started walking through the trees towards the tent. I was totally keyed up with my senses on full alert. When I reached the campsite, several things struck me as odd. Backpacks were scattered all over. No fire had been built, no wood collected. The tent was literally full of backpacks and women's clothing. Full of dread, I turned to leave and tell Nick what I had seen. As I left, I heard Nick start yelling, "Let's go! Let's get out of here!" Not knowing why he was yelling, I ran back to the truck. When I broke out of the trees, I saw a beat-up old Ford Taurus on the road, blocking us from leaving the meadow. I immediately leapt into the passenger seat and Nick floored the gas pedal. The car was occupied by 2 men. A third person was laying against a window in the back. As we drove across the meadow, the driver attempted to block us from the road, but Nick drove down around them and accelerated the way we had come from. I looked back and saw the car attempting to turn around on the narrow road. Nick drove like a madman, and though I was honestly terrified that they would catch up, we hit the highway without seeing the car again. I still do not know if that person in the back was male or female. I called the state police and they promised to send a trooper out to check out the scene. However, I received a call the next day from a trooper stating that the campsite, the backpacks, and the women's clothing was all gone, though he could tell people had been in the area. The strange table was still by the thick aspen grove. I have not returned to that area and do not intend to. Story number 4. There was a young girl kidnapped in the middle of the day on a neighborhood street in Springfield, Missouri. Someone in the street witnessed the event and tried chasing the car on foot to at least get the plate number and call the police. They sent out an Amber Alert after a few hours, identified the owner of the vehicle and his residence, but by the time they got to the house, they found her undressed body in a plastic tub in his basement. She had been murdered. The most disturbing part of this was that the guy was a middle school coach, and he had child pornography in his house as well as photos of young girls from his middle school. We found out at my Catholic high school that the murderer was the son of our theology teacher. Our teacher left school for over a week, I'm sure trying to fathom how his own son could commit such a heinous crime. The murderer was sentenced to death this year for the death of the girl, Haley Owens. Her family, as well as the family of the murderer, lobbied to change Amber Alert laws so they can be issued faster after a kidnapping is reported. Story number 5. Back in the 90s, my mom was on the highway heading home from a friend's house late at night. She was driving a really nice Thunderbird. After a while, this big white van drove next to her and the driver started performing some very rude gestures, and being young and dumb, my mom reciprocated the gestures. Then the man pulled up with a large Bowie knife to the window. My mom started panicking and sped up to get away, and the van was following right along. Then the guy tried to run her off the road. Keep in mind that they were traveling at speeds of upward of 100 miles per hour. She gets on the exit to get home, and he's still following her. When she finally gets back to her house, what she shared with her grandparents, she pulled into the driveway honking the horn, screaming, trying to wake someone up. The van pulled into the driveway just as her grandfather comes out in his underwear with a gun. The man got scared and drove off into the night. My mom wouldn't leave her house for a month except for school, but never at night. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your truly horrifying, scary stories to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. Till we meet again, stay sinful.